Hello and welcome to our video today about introduction to subqueries. So through you watching this video, you will learn a couple of things. A basic introduction to subqueries. What are subqueries, and what are some problems potentially that we can solve using subqueries? So to start off, first let us log right into our database. So we'll be using cPanel through my personal database. So once we log in here, we'll go to phpMyAdmin, our SQL database manager, and you will see we have a database named school. So starting off, let's answer the question before we dive right into anything. What is a subquery? Like, what are they specifically? Well, a subquery is a query that is nested inside either a select, insert, update, or a delete statement, or just a query inside of another query. So I know this sounds confusing a little at first, but once you get the trick of it, once you get the hang of it, it's actually really simple and becomes a very, very useful and versatile tool in database management, especially SQL databases, obviously. So let's give you guys a brief demo of our actual database. So going through, you'll look that we have 4 different tables within our database, with their unique data. So we have our roles table, we have our users in guild table, we have our servers table, as well as our user table. So all of these tables containing different data, some pertaining to each other and some not. So there are certain problems that we can solve through the use of subqueries, and they are very useful in specific ways. So let's jump right into it. In our SQL, we'll go to our database root. So we are any SQL statement we write pertains to the entire database instead of just one of these tables. So going right into it, we go to our SQL, and the problem that we have right now is that we want to be able to find data from one table correlating to another. So what I mean when I say this, for example, is we need a piece of data, let's say a role name from the table roles. And we want to be able to obtain this role name by querying the role ID not in the roles table. So how we would go about doing that is as follows. Through the use of a nested query or a subquery, we would go into SQL and write a statement like this. First, we will select the table role name from the table roles, where the role ID equals, and then here is when we get into our subquery. So we then select role ID from the table user in guild. So right here, you'll see that we are actually looking for this information not through any of these tables that either for some reason someone may not have access to, or there could be pertaining sensitive information. So sorting through, we can find data this way via the use of a subquery. So from users in guild, where the unique ID of the user equals 2. So with this subquery, we click go, and just like that, we have selected role name from the table roles, where the role ID, which is what we are looking for, the role name, we're looking for the role name with the role ID from this table, the users in guild table, and we are able to collect the data that we're looking for, so officer. So let's double check that our SQL statement was correct. So it did indeed run, and then we look at users in guild table, we look at our role ID, which is what we looked for within roles, right? So we looked for this role ID, which was officer, through users in guild via subquery, versus using a normal query. You have to kind of, instead of doing that, you have to SQL and look for this and that, versus we can kind of just condense a giant what could potentially be a giant SQL statement and multiple lines where you're writing multiple select statements versus the use of a subquery where we can put queries inside of another query. So that is a basic introduction to subqueries. I hope you guys learned something, and I will be looking forward to seeing you guys in the next video.